Welcome, Brother Adam Baraz, to the Unspeakable Bliss podcast. Listeners, welcome to episode number. Again, I lost track because we just are cranking these babies out. First, I'm going to introduce Adam. He has practiced bodywork professionally for nearly a decade, having accumulated more than 1,000 hours of bodywork training from premier schools, including Esalen Institute and McKinnon. He received a degree in somatic psychology from Naropa University, and since then, he completed a 3-year training in somatic experiencing trauma therapy. He also completed a year-long counseling psychology certificate training with Interchange Counseling Institute. In 2015, he was elected to be a counseling skills teacher on the Interchange leadership team. Over the past decade, Adam has devoted several thousand hours, yes, ladies and gentlemen, several thousand hours to the practice of meditation. His father, James Baraz, author of Awakening Joy, is a founding teacher of Spirit Rock Meditation Center, and the teachings of Dr. Reggie Ray of the dharmaocean.org have had a profound influence on his understanding of somatic meditation, healing, and embodied transformation. His current principal meditation teachers are Lama Dramed Norbu, heir of Chagdu Tolku Rinpoche, forgive my pronunciation of this, and Choku Nyama Rinpoche, and he has spent nearly a whole year of his life in retreat. Welcome, brother.
Thank you. I didn't know that we were going to get the whole rundown here. It's been a while. I've edited that bio. But anyway, it's great to be here with you.
Mm-hmm.
You need no introduction, but in the pantheon of my life, I can say that you are one of those shining examples of a great human being, and it's an honor to be on your podcast. So thanks for inviting me.
My pleasure, brother. My pleasure. So would you like to, well, first, one other thing I want to share is, although Adam is all of these, or embodies and has spent time in all of these different things that I pointed to, and since then more, as he alluded to, he's also a dear brother, a dear friend of mine. And we got the chance to spend a good 10 days together here in Costa Rica a year and a half ago.
Mm-hmm.
So
let's let it rip. I'm happy to get into whatever we're going to get into today, and excited to make a journey.
First, long or short, it's entirely up to you. How did you wind up on Unspeakable Bliss podcast, speaking with me? And after this journey that you've gone on, that I spoke to, how did you arrive in this moment?
How did I arrive in this moment? Wow.
What's your story, man?
What's my
Your story?
Okay. We'll do some cliff notes here.
Uh-huh.
A little bit about my story. Grew up here in the Bay Area in Berkeley, California. Very thankful for incredible parents. My mom, Jane, and my father, James. Grew up in I'd say a spiritual household. My father, as you mentioned, is a meditation teacher in the Theravadan Buddhist tradition, and a founding teacher of Spirit Rock with Jack Kornfield. So grew up in Vipassana insight meditation community, and grew up, I guess somewhat uniquely in terms of having been exposed at a pretty young age into kind of notions of mindfulness and deeper questioning of what's life about, what's reality about.
Good karma.
Interesting. And then of course, just like pretty much everyone, just thrust through the trials and throes of being a young person. Middle school was very rough on me. High school was rough on me. College, I was, just very much in my own world in many senses. I could say that there was certain things that happened kind of early in life, unrelated to my family of origin, that just where I really felt kind of alone, or existentially grappling with my own existence, and in a great deal of, I would say, aloneness, depression, kind of trauma. Pretty much, I'd say from 7 to 18, 19, went through a really dark night of the soul. And during that time, around middle school, that's kind of when I started to get into meditation practice. I was in enough existential anguish and suffering that when my dad recommended that I check out this middle school meditation class, I said yes. And that was kind of in middle school, was the beginning of actually starting to learn mindfulness practice, and started to get into my own spiritual path around that time. And then very much was, on the one hand, very interested in spirituality. Also grew up, I was a stoner in high school. I was very much in the exploration of my own consciousness, in the exploration of reality, and went through all the peaks and valleys and dips. And I'd say that journey really brought me around my young adult years into feeling a strong call to start to work with my own inner state of being, and starting to work on healing my own nervous system, and starting to work with some of the traumatic events that had happened in my life. And that I really would say I found a deeper sense of rooting into the spiritual path. Around 19, I took a trip at the nudging of my mom to India, and I was part of a program called the Antioch Buddhist Studies program, and it was an incredible program where myself and 34 other college students, we lived in a monastery in India, Bodh Gaya, India, where very close to, just down the street from where the Buddha's, the Bodhi tree, where the Buddha had his great awakening, down the street. And so lived in a monastery there, and started to, was practicing, learning various meditation traditions with a Burmese Vipassana Theravadan teacher, Theravadan master, Sayadaw Ulamin, and then also a Zen master for a month, Sensei Akai Kurimatsu, learning Zen meditation, and then a month with a Lama, or a Rinpoche, teacher that you mentioned. His name is Choki Nyima Rinpoche. So
say it again.
His name is Choki Nyima Rinpoche.
Choki Nyima.
Choki Nyima.
Choki Nyima.
Chokyi, Choki Nyima. Great son of the Dharma, his name means. He really looks, he's the son. So for those of you who are interested, he's like, he looks like Yoda. And his father was a great meditator named Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche, who was actually George Lucas's inspiration for Yoda.
Wow. That's cool.
So, that was the lineage. When I met Chukyinima Rinpoche, he walks into the room and there's just this kind of overwhelming experience of warmth and presence that emanates and radiates from him. And when I met Rinpoche in India, I felt like, wow, whatever he's doing, that's what I want to know more about. So when I in this program felt a strong connection to Rinpoche, then went through a blessing ceremony at the end of that program and felt that strong connection to Rinpoche, and began studying in this Vajrayana tradition of Buddhist practice, or Dharma practice, and spent about 7 summers studying at his center in California, in Leggett, California. It's called Gomde, and had just a great fortune. This center, Gomde, Rinpoche is very vast in his vision, and had really incredible teachers from this lineage come. He has a number of all-star meditator brothers. Perhaps folks have heard of Mingyur Rinpoche, who was very famous. He wrote a book called In Love with the World, where he's like a well-known Lama and very established, but he actually escaped from his own monastery and lived by himself as like a hermit, vagabond, yogi, without money, without any protection or attendance. And so he just, anyways, this whole family is kind of a very unique family of meditators. Another brother, Sokni Rinpoche, also is a great Tibetan but Western Buddhist teacher, and like that. So that's kind of been one of the main practice lineages that I've studied with in this tradition. And then also around 23, met another one of my main teachers, Dr. Reggie Ray. Studied with him at Dharma Ocean very closely for about 6 years. And have been very deeply influenced by his teachings and the view that he presents of somatic meditation according to another tradition, the Kagyu or the Mahamudra tradition of Vajrayana Buddhism. So that's that level of some of my influences and training. But I'd say also along the way, definitely very much in the school of life. So
yeah, well, if I'm hearing you correctly, and I want everyone else to hear this again, I'm talking to a guy whose grand teacher is the real life Yoda. Like, let's just take that in for a moment, right? Not your teacher, but his teacher is the guy that Yoda was based on.
That's correct. Yeah.
That's pretty sweet. Wow. Oh, and then a note on that book, In Love with the World. So when Zlatka and I were in India, Nepal, India, a couple of years ago, we went to this teaching by one of these masters. I don't remember exactly what his name was. It's a very beautiful place. And then like a year later, I got introduced to this book, and I started reading this book, and I was in my mind's eye imagining what this the monastery where he escaped from, because he goes into detail as to how he escaped and waited at night till the guards were asleep or whatever it is. And I'm imagining going and being at this place, right? And then I look it up. Later, many months later, I look it up and I go, oh my God, I was there. I was walking. It was actually his place. So it's just this really kind of synchronous moment.
You were at the monastery he escaped.
I was actually at the monastery that he escaped from, and then I started reading the book thinking like, wow, how cool would it be to go to this monastery, only to realize when I later saw pictures of it that that was the same place that Zlatko and I actually visited this teacher at.
Mhm. Yeah.
I don't think the teacher was him that we went to sit with for the blessing that he was giving, but it's still pretty cool.
Okay, so here we are. You guide the way.
What are we, dude? What are we doing when we're meditating? What is you've docked these hours, you've been with these teachers. What's happening when we're meditating?
I don't know if I'm necessarily qualified to say exactly what's happening for anyone else
Okay.
meditating. But I'll share a little bit about a perspective that
Mm-hmm.
has been helpful for me. First off, to say, I think there's many different forms of meditation. So I
Mm-hmm.
think it's helpful to distinguish that when we say meditation, we're not always talking about the same thing. Yeah, and there's different ways, different techniques, meditation techniques. In my own path, I started with doing insight meditation or Vipassana meditation, which probably some listeners are familiar with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And in Vipassana meditation, there's, the main vehicle is the practice of mindfulness. And so there's a quality of attention into the present moment. And that can be attention into the body, breath, thoughts and feelings, sensations. And in a sense, starting to notice how thoughts, feelings, sensations are moving and arising and being known and then transforming or changing. So actually a little more about my story. So that was, Vipassana meditation, insight meditation. It's what my father teaches. And I was on a long 3-month, I was on a 3-month silent meditation retreat. That was really my first long retreat. I've actually never done another 3-month retreat. So that was my first and only. But during that retreat, when I was about 23, I had horrible back pain. And I was sitting, basically the practice is sitting and walking and paying attention to when I'm sitting and I'm breathing in and I feel my breath coming in and I feel my breath going out. Except for that, I had this big rock in the back of my back, and it was hard to be present. And I asked the teachers at that time, can you help me with this intense pain that I'm feeling?
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, the practice, that's being offered is the practice of paying attention to what's happening. And so that was the basic approach that the teachers kind of responded. Well, see if you can pay attention, see if you can be present and cultivate a witness consciousness. And basically the idea that there is a consciousness that is not perhaps entangled in the experience, but that is as knowing the experience. So I tried that, but still I could say that I was just kind of constantly rolling in my own resistance and challenge with all that. And that's in that experience, that was the beginning of me really feeling like, okay, I know that mindfulness is very powerful, but there's got to be something else that can help me with the physical pain and challenges I'm facing inside myself. And that's when I found this work, not so long after, while I was in Colorado at Naropa. I found Reggie's work, what he calls meditating with the body. And that's when I was introduced to somatic meditation. And so just to answer a little bit more, when we say, what do we do when we're meditating? I like to, I'll share a little bit of the somatic approach to meditation.
I was going to ask you about that.
So first off, to just define the word somatic, because there's probably a bunch of definitions you could give, but for me, somatic is everything beneath the thinking process. It's how it actually feels inside my bodysuit. What's it like? What's the lifiness like inside the body? And
the headache I have right now would qualify for that, right?
Sure, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. So most of the time, I think we're engaging through our thinking process, through the attentional focus of our cerebral left hemisphere, where we're focusing on a subject-object relationship to the world. And in contrast, the somatic approach is learning how to be in the body beneath the thinking process, or being in, you could say, more of a direct experience of life. And the basic approach, which to me is very elegant, is that everywhere you go, you are in your body. Your body is always here and now with whatever you're doing. So sometimes in meditation, we are trying to bring our mind back to the present moment, bring our attention back to the present moment. In somatic meditation, we're learning how to be in the experience that's happening inside the body. And the basic idea is that if we can actually just be in our embodied experience, our body is already naturally present here and now.
So I think we're going to go down the path of rigorous honesty right now.
Let's do it.
We brought up this topic before we started recording, of talking about exploring rigorous honesty, and this is what is, I find it to be kind of challenging to even speak about this, because I have had a lot of time meditating, similar to you, not as much as you, but I've practiced a lot. And I've now arrived at the point where if I sit here and I say, okay, what's going on in my body? And I start with my body, all I can really get down to is that there's just this field of sensations. And it's not even obvious to me anymore where my body ends and the world begins. There's just, I've said on other podcasts, there's the best words I could give to this is thisness, or just this. And why it's kind of a challenge, and I'm wondering maybe if you've worked with people or given some thought to this as well, is I don't know if I would have arrived at this point if not for all the experiences that I've had to, quote unquote, get to this point. And so when I offer the pointer to my experience, which is just thisness, is very different than I am suffering with fill in the blank, whatever that may be, when I am exclusively identifying my body and my mind as, well, what you're seeing here on the screen is this this, I'm pointing to my head to indicate mind, but that just this and everything else is other than that.
Mhm.
Explore this with me.
Mhm. Yeah. Sometimes I need a moment just to take it in, so I'm gonna just
We got all the moments.
something that really has informed my experience with meditation is really focusing in on the awareness that is being present with experience. And I say that because sometimes meditation is being presented in such a way that it sounds like something I do. I am going to now go sit and meditate. And it's true on one level, right? We can sit in a meditation posture, and now I am performing the act of meditation. But in some way, if there's an effort or a certain kind of trying to meditate, then it can be a practice where our ego mind is performing or doing the meditation. And that's not wrong or bad. I think there's a lot of benefit that can come from that. But one of the teachings that's been really helpful for me that comes from this tradition, the tradition of Yoda. Yoda, Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche, he was an incredible meditator. He spent 20 years in solitary retreat. And he was famous for these very pithy teachings, very, very to the heart, to the point meditation teachings. And so one of his most stripped down teachings was as it is. Leave it, whatever your experience is, leave it as it is.
It's so simple.
So in a simple way, I'll share a little bit what I think he's kind of implying. Right now, you and I, we have our eyes open. Our ears are open and functioning. Eyes, ears, and at the same time, also our body is, you could say, conscious or registering feeling, sensation, energy, perhaps a feeling tone, emotion. So eyes, ears, and body are online. They're present. And that's happening all the time, actually. There's just a natural sensory awareness into the environment through the eyes, through the ears, through the heart, through the body. And normally what we're doing is we're then trying to focus our energy on a task, on an object, on an email, And so there's a thought or a concept or a mission, a goal in mind. But that's not what Yoda is talking about. He's talking about before we get involved with that, and after we get involved with that, there's just an openness through the eyes, through the ears, through the body. And what happens if we just let everything else go and we're just take a moment just to rest? Just letting everything, whatever the experience is, just letting it take place openly and freely in the field of the space, you could say. So there's, maybe you can feel it, right? There's a sense of freshness. There's a sense of just whatever's ordinarily happening right now that continues to happen, and just kind of relaxing into that field of the happening or the beingness, or as you say, the suchness. But we're not adding an extra level of meaning making to that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So there's a kind of a freshness. It's not like your mind is somewhere else, but it's not like your mind is focused on any particular thing. It's kind of a nothing, but an everything that's here as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that's my sense of when you say, what are we doing in meditation?
Mm-hmm.
We just strip it all down as it's the presence. It's the presence, the body is naturally aware. Or the consciousness that is flowing through the body, that's keeping all of your cells alive, all of your vital functions going. That same intelligence is also operating in as a kind of present, fresh knowing of experience. But we don't need extra language to tell a story about that.
Mm-hmm.
We can actually just learn how to be in that present, fresh, pure unfolding of nowness.
Well, I have nothing to say. Unspeakable bliss. I'm laughing because I have a podcast about talking, on some level, about this. It's a funny thing. It's a funny thing to do. And I really appreciate this kind of guided experience that we just naturally are in and went into that you just shared. And there's one piece that my pesky old mind wants to ask you about, to explore with you.
Let's dig in now. All right.
So you mentioned that I'm just gonna call him Yoda now. Talked about how it's something that's there before we begin being the one doing the meditation, or it's this already, it's what's already here. And I want to explore the relationship with effort and intention and outcome, especially when we're meditating or engaging in one of these practices where we're not doing it, but we're wanting to sort of see what it is. And I'll encapsulate it with this quote that I think comes from Zen, which is, we can't control an accident, but practice makes us accident prone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what's the interplay between effort and effortlessness?
Yeah, and that's kind of, I mean, in a way, I'm asking, what are we doing here again with the meditation thing? If it's already, what, or why would anyone listening to this, or why, you've gone on such a lengthy path. It would be clear to me that there's some benefit, there's something really supportive, beneficial, good, and I feel the same way about this. But sometimes people will ask me, it's like, well, if we're already that, then why would I do this or engage in a practice like this?
Mm-hmm. What do you think?
So what I can say about this is, I have noticed a relationship between effort and those that walk into a room like your teacher and you feel, oh man, I want to be around this person. There's something, maybe I can't even put it into words, but there's something right. And I mean that in the way of beautiful, true about the fruits. Yeah, the fruits of practice. So for me, it's very clear that even though, man, I mean, sometimes I sit down hopelessly to meditate. I go, all right, here I go again. I am observing myself wanting to experience this way of being that I already am. And I'm aware of that, like as a thought construct. And I go, all right, well, I'm still going to sit here. I'm still going to practice. And it feels to me that the more I do that, and the more I'm patient with myself, then the more patient, compassionate, kind, loving I am, sort of like as a mirror for my own practice in conversation and dialogues. And I kind of, I guess, measure my progress in that way. Like what if this is helping me or helping others too, if I'm exploring this with others, what are the fruits of my labor?
Mm-hmm.
And yet I look at the paradox of it.
Mm-hmm. You know, in the Buddhist teachings, one teaching that I'm thinking about is this notion that all beings have Buddha nature as our essence, but that Buddha nature is like a seed within us. So we could say that we all have a seed, but is a seed the same thing as a redwood tree?
No.
If it's a redwood tree seed, is the redwood tree seed the same thing as the redwood tree?
Sort of, and not really.
Sort of not really, right? So that is to say, right, when, let's be realistic here. Let's just be really honest, right? As I'm moving through my day, am I in a meditative state all the time? Absolutely not. Or am I being mindful all day long? Absolutely not. No, my mind is cogitating, is churning with I hope that this person sees me this way, but I'm afraid that I'm a total imposter,
Uh,
or
yeah.
whatever my mind, wherever my mind's going to go.
Mhm.
Right. So I think a lot of it also has to do, especially we could be like a great meditator or a good meditator when we're all alone, but then you get in a room with someone else, and then all my neurosis is just going to come pouring out of
Familiar with that too.
me. So then we got this other thing, which is our thoughts, where our mind goes, are those crunchy feelings inside. When someone uh, eats the food that you left in the refrigerator, you know, whatever it is, like there's our triggers, and when we're triggered, are we being perfect, spacious, equanimous beings? No, we're not. I mean, we're being ourselves, and that's we're being our human self. But that's different than being in a state of wisdom all day long. So I don't know if this is speaking into the point, but I think that um, the more time that I'm spending dedicating myself to practicing mindfulness awareness, or paying attention, and especially relaxing, actually, relaxing with wherever my mind goes. It's like I like this analogy, like at the beginning of when we're just starting to meditate, it's like our mind is like this mountain, and there's a beach ball, and it can take a lot of effort to walk up the hill and to balance the beach ball at the top of the mountain. And it's like this craggy mountain, and the wind can blow it off. Almost anything can blow the beach ball off the top of the mountain. But then over time, over weeks, especially if you go on meditation retreat, 7-week retreat, 10-day retreat, or a longer retreat, over time, if you spend a lot of time meditating, and then all those disturbances are coming, more and more, like that craggy mountain starts to flatten out over time, so that it's easier to balance the beach ball for a longer period of time. It's getting more flat. And then over time, but still the wind blows the ball one way or another. And then eventually, over time, that craggy mountain, through a lot of mind training, can start to become like a valley. And then it takes more wind, more of a storm, to blow our minds somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And it may still happen, but it may be quicker that the ball comes. Now the ball starts to come back by itself. We don't have to spend so much effort. The ball rolls up, and then it lands back in the valley. And so eventually our mind can have this capacity where we can relax more and more with all of the craziness of our outer world, and still coming back again and again to the simplicity of this present, fresh moment of experience.
The crazy, beautiful part of this, I find that is reassuring, is I think it's a self-love and a self-acceptance for moments when I'm not being quote unquote mindful, or doing some weird thing where maybe I'm playing out a trauma that I don't even know about because it's unconscious. But this path, at least to me, I can look at that and go, oh, and the totality of being is appearing in that way. And that's okay. Like like, I can forgive myself. I can accept myself. I can make peace with that. And I guess in a way, then I'm bringing that awareness into those places where maybe before I would do that and not even think. I would just say, oh, that was wrong. I did that wrong, and not even have the uh, self-reflecting thoughts to look at that. And that's, I'm actually juxtaposing my own experience with that to some people. For example, Nisargadatta Maharaj. I just heard Rick Archer on Buddha at the Gas Pump talking to David Goodman. David Goodman was the guy that lived with Ramana Maharshi and Nisargadatta and spent time with these beings. And David Goodman said, without a doubt, he said that man's body was addicted to cigarettes. And I guess he died of lung cancer. And for the last year of his life, at meetings with people that would come to listen to him, instead of having a circle there, they cleared out a path for him to pace up and down, because his whole body, mind, I imagine his mind too, was going through the normal withdrawals from having been addicted to cigarettes his whole life. And I guess I'm bringing this up thinking about Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche as well, who's so here's an embodiment of by the estimation of many people that have been with him and have received benefit from his teaching, who maybe struggled with alcohol addiction or
He died of alcohol addiction.
Yeah, right. So it's an interesting thing to explore, how freedom, I guess, is so free that it can even appear to be addicted, we could say.
I feel the in the sharing, this feels like the point in the conversation about, like, okay, there's spiritual view, there's spiritual practice, but then there's also, let's call it just human beings.
Uh-huh.
And this last year or two, it's been a powerful time of really looking into myself and starting to see so much more of, like, all of the crazy parts that I've gotten into doing these retreats in the dark, and it's a practice where you go into a space, a dark room space. It's totally dark, and food comes through a slot in the door, and it's basically like a voluntary solitary confinement. That's essentially the practice. So it's an interesting process to be in a dark room by yourself for 7 days. I've done 7 days. I've done 14 days. I've done 21 days. And there's what you have read in a book, what you think you know. And then there's what you do when you're alone by yourself in a room by yourself and no one's watching. And needless to say, it fleshes out all of the bullshit inside. I'm not saying that it's not fleshed out. It's just on tap,
Flushing.
Yeah. I'm really like, the word that lands in this moment is like, there's also, I think, something that can feel sort of disappointing, in a way that, you can have a teacher who's an incredible teacher who can explain really profound spiritual truths, but then is also addicted in some way, whether it's alcohol or cigarettes or sex,
Mhm.
has is showing this kind of unintegrated aspect of their humanity that you can't quite rationalize. You could try to, right? But that actually, um, it's just kind of out there.
Right. Yeah.
And I think it's a really, really valuable thing to have to lean into the kind of the seeming contradiction of, um, on one level, we could say that there's no problem, right? There's, human beings, or the universe is unfolding in, um, a kind of divine intelligence, according to, or just as it is, that there's a wholeness or completeness or a perfection to life. But at the same time, there's all this chaos and suffering that also happens in life. And to not embellish the divinity, but also not, um, damn the shadow aspect.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I mean, this is constantly the work that I'm doing on myself and also with other people as well, which is there's part of me that's totally free and liberated, dare I say. And then there's these other aspects or other parts of me that seem not at all congruent with this part of me that's free. So then I look and I go, okay, how can these two things, instead of being at odds with each other, integration is a word that comes to mind, individuation. Carl Jung, right? He talks about the full individual unique expression. And I hold the belief, I think it's a belief, that in order for me to be fully free and fully liberated and fully integrated with all the whole, I have to be fully individuated as well. And so those two things are not mutually exclusive or at odds with each other. One, it's sort of like this, Adam. It's like when I witness myself in some egoic, neurotic behavior, thoughts, way of being, whatever it is, well, I'm witnessing it. And because I'm witnessing it, then it's almost as though I am seeing from the place of consciousness or from the place of freedom, where there appears to be this repetitive pattern from some trauma where I'm not quite yet all there, so to speak.
And what do you do with that? What do you do with the witnessing?
I want to give an example, and maybe we can talk about trauma too, because I think these are really interrelated. There's this, I'll give the actual experience that I had the other day where something came up. We were sitting for Shivaratri doing a chanting mantras, and I went there. I mean, I went to right where I am right now. It's like this beautiful doorway into this stateless state, or whatever it is, that where I can't even give any words to it. And at the end of it, I we were going around sharing one word of what our experience was. And I basically said, I have no words for this, but fuck. And I just said, fuck, really, really loud, because that seemed ecstatic and in clear alignment with, to an extent, what I was experiencing. And a friend of mine, who's actually he's a psycho-spiritual addiction coach, who we've been trading back and forth, doing sessions with me as the client, and then I'll be a client for him. He asked me, because Zlatka was sitting right next to me. We met for a session here, and he said, how was that experience for you? Because Zlatka and I, we go back and forth of, sometimes I'll express myself, and we have had moments where it doesn't feel that my full expression is welcome or appropriate. And then, so we have a dynamic, a kind of a clash, this thing of, oh, I feel controlled, et cetera, et cetera. And so we look at that and we work with that. And in this moment, when he asked me about it, he said, so how do you feel she responded to that? Or was she, did I make her uncomfortable by screaming fuck at the end of our chanting thing? And it was so beautiful, Adam, because I said, I didn't even think about that. It wasn't even a blip on my radar, actually. And so in talking about that, and that's been crucial to the work that he and I are doing. And I'm noticing that I'm kind of nervous sharing this right now, because it's like some deeply personal stuff in this dynamic that Zlatka and I have. But hopefully, yeah, I think it's for the good of our conversation, and hopefully there's some value and benefit for people listening. But it feels really vulnerable for me to be sharing this right now. But looking back on it, I was really joyful to notice that there wasn't, it's like this: I wasn't looking to be shut down. I wasn't putting the signal out, oh no, how is my significant other going to respond to me, versus just being really in this full, like, free expression. And I feel, to answer the question in a really roundabout way, that I was no longer in a trauma response by unconsciously or subconsciously doing something only to elicit the response, because really I just want to feel loved and accepted. And I was just in this free expression where I wasn't even aware of. I was so happy when my friend brought that to my attention, because I was like, man, I didn't even think about that. And nor did we have a dialogue or an interaction about it to this day, to this moment. I still don't know if she was feeling any type of way because of my expression. So I don't know how much that answered the question. But it's something like, I feel a healing of a trauma occurs when I don't squirm away or do that thing that I used to do. And sometimes I might not even notice when I've overcome the trauma. Just like in this kind of this instance, I didn't even, I was just so connected to the natural expression or something like that, that seemed to melt away this tie-in that I had with feeling like, oh, if I say something, I might not be accepted or loved or understood, or whatever that might be. How does that land, or does it make sense what I'm sharing with you?
Take a moment to feel in way in here.
And I want to presence, Adam, that if we could backtrack a little bit, this was my response to how, when I see my human doing something that is egoic, unintegrated, whatever it is, how this free consciousness element plays into that.
You know, one of the things that's been really, really helpful for me in my own spiritual path is I'd say it's something I learned a lot around being around Reggie, being around my teacher, Reggie Ray, that there's a tremendous amount of space for the messiness of the Sangha, the messiness of the community of the people that were there to go through, what they're going through.
Mm.
And that's not something, I'm not, I think it's a very unique boundary or line. In some sense, what I hear in your story with Zlatka and in this Shiva Ratri experience, like there's something that happens once we come into community with each other, then there's needs, then we have the needs of the individuals in a space. And oftentimes you spend enough time around other people, needs are going to come into conflict with each other. And one person wants the room warmer and one person wants the room colder. And that's just a small example, but like now we have big examples. We have preferences, we have needs, we have inclinations, we have desires, we have the engagement of our full human experience. And that's all happening within the context of the awareness that is more fundamental to all of us. That's part of our commonality of our shared fundamental consciousness or human consciousness. But that there is the play, the Shakespeare play of our life that is, riddled with drama, is high with drama. And I noticed that I'm more interested in kind of digging into the drama aspect on one level in doing this work. That more in the past, I would kind of want to, especially in the beginning, I'd want to watch my anger from back here. And I think there's a tremendous value to being able to be non-reactive to yourself or another person. So it's not to downplay the value of being able to witness and not respond. But I'm remembering, just kind of bringing it into this notion of trauma. When I was about 23, I was in a relationship with another person who was a really deep meditator and practitioner. And she said to me once, she said, "Adam, you're calm like a bomb."
That's good. I mean, it's not good,
but it was true. It was true. And I felt totally nailed by her comment. And I felt like, yes, there's this kind of like spiritual practitioner, good Buddhist outside. But inside, I just feel I'm burning with something. And I think that's to me, that's where the real grit, where the juice, where the flavor of this process, like it's been one of the most meaningful things in my path, is to, in a sense, get more intimate or more trusting of the inevitability of the clashes, the collisions, the disappointments that happen through doing this kind of work. But not as on one level, like getting intimate with it and having to get vulnerable with all of the ways that I am disappointing other people around me all the time. And as I disappoint other people, I'm disappointing a part of myself that wishes that I could be this great enlightened being or Buddha or teacher, which I'm just not. I'm just not there in my path. But I can still have an aspiration to that. But at the same time, there's something that's so freeing, in a sense, to be more of who I am, who I am at this moment in time. I really I love this one teaching that the path of awakening is not about living up to the person that we think that we ought to be, but it's about relaxing down and into and opening to the person that we most fundamentally are. Including all of the stuff that comes up in the process.
Now, tell me if you see the irony in what you just shared, which is that if you accept exactly who you are and the outbursts, the anger, the whatever it is, you're just radically being you, that in that acceptance of that, that is the living embodiment of liberation itself.
It could be. It could be.
Could be.
I like I'm tuning in. There's a famous Zen teaching. To live in the great way is to be without anxiety about non-perfection.
Ooh, 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 man, I almost want to title the podcast. Can you say that quote again?
As the third Zen patriarch, Sansanin, he says, to live in the great way is to be without anxiety about non-perfection.
Oh yeah.
Like if we just take a long vacation for a moment in not having anxiety about our non-perfection. To me, when I just felt that just a moment ago, it's like there's just a tremendous sense of relief. That's what I feel. It's like, yeah, I am who I am. There's certain aspects that are okay. And there's other aspects that are okay in this other way that other people might not feel are okay. But this is, this is me.
Reminds me of a quote by your father's colleague, friend, Jack Cornfield, who's many times he says in so many words, "You're perfect as you are." Or he's quoting someone too. We're perfect exactly as we are, and there is always room for improvement. There's one more piece, at least right now. There's only one more piece that I want to ask you about, talk to you about, which is the uneducating, the unlearning involved with this understanding. And I'm careful with my words with how I'm asking about this, because you and I discussed this offline a couple of weeks ago, which is I have this idea that a great amount of human suffering could be avoided if somehow in some way this could be infused into the lives of young people, instead of creating the traumas only to undo the traumas, if we're lucky, if we're fortunate, if we have access to those tools. And I say an uneducation and an unlearning piece, Adam, that has to do with, do babies already have this? Are they already the living emanation of exactly what we're speaking of, and it only gets how would I say, taken away through conditioning and parents and society passing along those traumas, and how might we navigate working with this?
Hmm. Feels like a super fast and deep topic, which I don't know that I'm fully well, I'll qualify myself in this moment to share my experience. And I think
Mhm.
it's a very important topic, right? Especially at this time, like to really think about, this time on the planet, there is a massive global shift in terms of our weather and climate change and our resources and countries at every level of where we're at as a species. There's so much transformation that's happening,
Yeah.
and likely a great deal of instability that's coming in the next period of years and
Mhm.
decades as our climate gets more and more intense. And if I were to boil it down, what would be my vision or my dream for humanity? It would be that we recognize that our leadership depends on our ability to um, have a sane relationship with reality.
Mhm.
And to do that, we have to have a sane relationship with ourselves. And in order to just to begin to start to have um, that deeper perception to meet the challenges that are coming, we got to start at a really young age to begin to build our capacity as human beings to um, with our own fundamental wisdom nature, we could say.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's going to be a training that the only way to do that is to begin to create curriculums that um, come into the mainstream of our education and are as valuable as, say, math or English or science, along the lines of human growth and development, personal development, and specifically awareness.
Mhm.
That awareness is really the key to healing our trauma. It's the key to learning how to be with the pain aspects of our experience and develop a quality of resilience in the face of stress and overwhelm. So, whatever your question was, it got me rolling on this. I think it's the linchpin in terms of the future of consciousness, is that it becomes something that is, let's say, democratized and given freely and openly, the very, very best of spiritual wisdom. That spiritual wisdom is something that doesn't belong to Buddhism. It doesn't belong to Advaita Vedanta or any one tradition. And yet, to be human is to be fundamentally have a consciousness that has this, pure, perfect wisdom nature to it. But that unless we actually cultivate a recognition of that aspect of our nature, it won't grow. So, certainly when I think about the lasting impact that I want to have on this planet, my intention is that through the course of my life, through the course of my work, that this work on being present, being present, and aware of
Mhm.
uh, the deeper aspect of consciousness, that could be shared out to the mainstream in such a way that it becomes so common, it becomes so second nature that in the generations to come, that is developed in kids, in young people at a very early age, and thus ensures the thriving of our species in
Mhm.
the tumultuous decades that we have to come, and centuries that we have to come. Who knows? Who knows how it will go? But it's definitely a moment in time where the very best of what we got, like we got to start learning it very, very young in our life. That's my sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I share that. And to that point, developing it in young people, it may well even look like somehow attuning to seeing how it's already there and present. And those teaching would then not be conditioning them into unnecessary suffering, which all of it's unnecessary by my estimation, and separation and things like this. And I don't have an answer either. I just know that it's something that I've been really passionately thinking about over the past month or so. And I'm speaking to Caverly Morgan, who she has a book called The Heart of Who We Are, Realizing Freedom Together, something, the subtitle, something like that. And she got the first mindfulness program into a public high school. And I guess one of the potential like roadblocks, if I could call it that, from what I've heard, is fundamentalist Christian groups kind of buckling down and thinking, which I think it's a mistake to think this, and it's coming from an unwillingness to look at really what it is that we're talking about. We're not talking about devil worship or satanic practices. We're talking about something that is common, and I feel that it can be stripped of any, for example, Sanskrit or Pali or terminology that might insinuate that this is connected to some one particular religious set of beliefs, because at least it's clear to me. I think it's very evidently clear to you that this is, I almost want to say, it goes beyond our birthright of knowing and communing and being what it is we really are. I mean, how much more fundamental does it get than that? Who knows? Maybe we'll put something together and propose it somewhere. I don't. It's a massive project, right? Like it's this massive thing. But I really feel called to continue to at least talk about it and explore it in a way that can maybe be of help. And to your point, we're helping. You're helping in the ways that you can, and I'm helping in the ways that I can, and that's the best we got.
I think the last word on this topic, that as a species, it's like we got to look at how do we work with our own nervous system. I love one of my teachers, a great mentor, George Bertelstein. He said, there's no flower in the universe more sensitive than the human being.
Mm.
And so we got a really sensitive, inner self, but then we got all of this challenge out here. So how do we feel safe to be ourselves in the light of all of the stuff that's around us? And that's my prayer. That's my prayer for myself. That's my prayer for my friends and my community, and really everyone, that we can feel safe and at home and whole, inside of ourself, inside of our bodysuit, and how it feels on the inside. And that it's that feeling of safety. The more safe that we feel inside of ourselves, the more safe that we can be to each other, and the more safe we can be together, the more safe that we can be to each other in all of the ways, the more we can, I think, come together and start to work on the bigger problems that we're all facing as a species and as a humanity. So that's my prayer. And, I want to say thank you so much for this time today. I'm so appreciative.
Thank you, brother. Yeah, I really cherish our time together and this exploration. And I will, at the bottom of in the show notes, I'll link up your website, and I want to just ask if there's any offerings, programs, retreats, or anything that you want to talk about now. And if not, I'm happy to just link up all your information in the notes as well.
Yeah, sure. It's kind of all in the pipeline right now. I'm literally writing the outline for my next course. It's called Relaxing the Body into Being. And it's the five-step elemental process of somatic meditation, which is a synthesis of the last decade of this work. So I'm excited to launch that course mid-April. I'll be launching, or we'll be starting that course. And if you're interested, feel free to reach out to me. And I do offer private one-on-one sessions. I do combination somatic work, body work, online coaching. I do that work as well. So if you're interested in any of those things, then feel free to reach out. And I look forward to what's to come here. I feel that there's something that we're going to do together.
Yeah, well, everything that Adam just said you'll be able to find it in the notes. And bro, did the back pain go away? What ended up happening to the back pain?
I could say that this work, I'd say that there's a lot of benefit here. I definitely 10 years later, I could say that my back is in pretty good condition. So underneath all of that, I think we can learn how to relax more. And that's what I'm excited to share in this upcoming course, is how do we relax our body into being. Yeah.
Relaxing the body into being. I love the title.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank you, my brother, everyone. Thank you for listening. We will see you next time on Unspeakable Bliss.